All right, so we are live. Hey, everybody, this is JD Reese over here at the Genuine Real Estate Group. Today, I have an amazing person and lender here in St. George, Michael Bringhurst. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Excited. Thank you.
Awesome. Um, got some questions for you today, some simple stuff, and I guess let's just jump right into it. So, who are you? What do you do? What are you about?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this with me because I just love what you're doing, and these podcasts are pretty cool. So, but yeah, so my name's Mike Bringhurst. I live in St. George, Utah. Just a local boy. Mortgage loan officer. That's my official title: mortgage loan originator or loan officer. So yeah, I've been just do mortgage loans. Anyone that needs financing on a house, that's my full-time gig, is helping people figure out that type of stuff. So
Awesome. And when did you get into lending?
so I got my foot in the door as an assistant to another loan officer back in 2012. So it's been a full 10 years now. About a
Wow.
year and after that, I got my license. So been licensed a little bit under 10 years. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I guess the big question is the why lending. What captured your attention there?
Yeah, I love that question. So, I've thought a lot about it over the years. I think it was just always, there's a true why, but I look a little deeper than that. I feel like I was kind of led to it in the sense that my whole childhood, I've always been fascinated by housing. And for some reason, even as like a young kid, in my head, I was like, I've got to own a home someday. Like it, and I don't know that many kids think that. I'm sure some do, but it was like, I remember as early as like second grade, I would notice, oh, that's a nice house, or that's an older home, or I just noticed houses, and I thought about houses often, and I was aware of the type of home I lived in. And then as I got older, I realized that it's like hard to buy a house, or I thought it was, right? I thought it was hard, and that was a big life goal. And then how I truly got in. So the background is I've always been super fascinated by housing. Till this day, I'll sit on, maybe like a lot of people do, but I put my daughter to bed every night. It takes about 30 minutes for that little 4-year-old to fall asleep, and I'll be on Zillow, and I'll look up home prices in Canada and Tennessee, just because I just love,
Just to get the idea.
yeah, like what's going on out there in housing. So, but I got my first mortgage in 2010, and I was fascinated by the process. I was fascinated by what the loan officer did, and I remember thinking, like, what a cool job that guy has. But I
That
didn't get to
was
that point.
that
Go ahead.
was that was one of the reasons why I got into real estate was because when I bought my first house, the loan officer I worked with, Blake Bench is his name.
Yeah,
Good old Blake.
yeah,
He got me a loan, and I was like, I had no credit.
yeah,
I barely made any good money. It was just enough to be able to buy a house.
yeah,
And he made it work. And I was like, man, this guy's a wizard. This is so
yeah.
cool.
No, that's right. And I thought the same thing. I went into Security Service Federal Credit Union, and I was like, I want to buy a house. I'm like 22, and I hadn't lost my hair yet, so I looked like I was like 17, and they didn't even take my application. They said, no, you probably wouldn't qualify. That's what they said.
I walked into a credit union too. I was like, I don't need to get a home loan. They're like, are you
Yeah,
sure?
yeah. So eventually, I knew worked at a different credit union, and I told him, I was like, I only make $13 an hour, which I just gotten a raise. I was like, but I knew it still wasn't much, and for the time. And anyway, he got me into a house similar like your experience with Blake. I was like, wow, like this camera's falling. This is cool. This guy was able to make that work. So then anyway, to finish up that story though, I was going through school just here at the local university, and a guy that was in my classes, he was going to school for like a bucket list. Like he just something he'd always wanted to do, never got his education. And he was a loan officer. And I would sit and look at his spreadsheets and stuff on his computer as he's doing work through our long classes. And I was just fascinated by it. And he's the guy that eventually hired me to be a loan officer. I begged him. I was like, dude, get me in. I want to learn this stuff.
That's awesome. It's life-changing, right?
Yeah.
Like your trajectory of your life completely changed. Before I was selling homes, I was selling phones. And I was working with real estate agents because I managed their business accounts, and they would tell me about some of the commissions they would be making and like their income. And I was so blown away by it all that it got me interested. I'm the opposite. When I was young, I didn't even look at houses as like anything crazy.
Yeah.
I grew up in a pretty nice house. My dad, is fairly responsible and paid it all off. And he's always talked to me about like paying off houses and stuff. So I didn't really have like I didn't really notice homes, but what really caught my attention was the realtors in the industry. And just like, you don't have to be in an office all day. You get to go golf whenever you want. like just the standard cliche realtor stuff is the thing that kind of got me interested into it. And then when I actually went through the process, I immediately realized that I could personally, and maybe you've had this thought, is I could probably do this better than the person that just helped me. I at least on the real estate side, I got that immediate feeling. So that's what pushed me in that trajectory. Did you have anything like that happen where you kind of were like found yourself or found that you could, adjust the process a bit?
Well, it's funny because one of the first things I learned about, when you get into something, it's hard not to attract your own demographic of people. So I got into loans and I immediately attracted a bunch of other early 20-year-old dudes or families that wanted to buy a house, and they needed first-time home buyer type of loans. And so I, quickly learned the ins and outs of all these different loans. And in that process, I was like, you know what? I don't really like the loan this guy got me in. I would not have put myself in this same mortgage.
Wow.
I would have put myself in a different type of loan. And that was a critical moment in my career that maybe we'll touch on later. But that was a super critical moment because that's when I realized that it's way more than just doing a loan for somebody. Like if you do it the right way, you're protecting their finances for years to come.
Right.
And that not just protecting, but growing their finances. But I didn't understand that until I got into it and realized, no knock on that guy, but yeah,
Right.
sure, I would have done it different.
Now, so this talk show, this podcast, whatever I call it, the Genuine Minute, it's client facing, but it's also like agency facing, people within the industry. So a question I have, and this is a good leeway to that, is as you were a new lender at one point, what would you give advice wise to any new lenders getting in the industry, especially with how things are right now?
Yeah, you touched on a cultural thing that you don't agree with anymore. You talked about that realtors put off this, you get to do whatever you want. It's so fun. And my number one thing that I would say to anybody that's new or even in the industry that wants to get to the next level is treat it like a job. And what I mean by that is, if you have self-worth and self-respect, I don't know many people that would not try to become an expert at what their career is, right? If you have enough self-respect, you're going to, whether you're the plumber or the FedEx guy, you want to get your routes down. I mean, you think of anything, like you can become an expert at something, right? And so with mortgages, treat it like a job in the sense that you put in the time. Yet, yes, you're in commission-based loan officer, but If you need to go to the kids' game at 2 p.m, great. But in general, put in 8 hours a day. And that was a critical thing early on in my career. I got in at a very difficult time in the industry. Everybody I met with had just gone through a bankruptcy or foreclosure, it felt like.
Yeah.
But I was driving on the boulevard, going over I-15 here in town, and it kind of clicked in my head in that moment. I thought, I know how much the commission is on an average loan, and I know how much I need to make to live a month. And I was like, I need to close like 2 loans a month. And then I thought, well, if I actually work 8 hours a day, 20 to 25 days a month, considering weekends and stuff, there's no way on earth, if I'm truly applying myself for 8 hours a day, there's no way that I can't find 2 people that need financing.
Yeah.
Like, impossible.
Oh, 100%.
And that at that moment it clicked, and I was like, I got this. I can do this. And at that moment, that's when I was all in, and I was super confident. So on the one hand, when I say treat it like a job, that's what I mean. Give it time that it deserves. And on the other hand, become an expert. And I don't want to get too long-winded, but an analogy I've used over time talking to newer loan officers is your license, when you get your loan, and I think this goes for real estate, when you get your realtor's license or your loan officer's license, it's the same thing as purchasing an acre or 10 acres of land that is unfarmed and not producing any fruits and veggies.
Yeah.
But a lot of times people think like, oh, I got my license, I'm going to make money now. It's like, no, you just bought the rights to farm a field. You actually have to go farm it.
Right. You got to put the work in. And the funny thing is, some of these agents getting in and lenders getting in have no guidance.
Correct.
They just get the license and they have zero guidance. And I think people like ourselves are in a position to be able to potentially offer that type of guidance on a team, or with different type of splits and structures. So I think that's absolutely true. If you become a licensed person in the real estate industry, just because you have a license is not going to mean that you're going to produce results. And you may get lucky. You may get, 1 or 2 deals here that, family, friends refer to you, but you'll continue to grow and farm that land if you put the time in, put the effort in. That's awesome that you apply that for, like if I hit this 8 hours a day. When I got into real estate, I just said one thing every day. and that was like bare minimum, but the thing is, I took no days off with that. So even on holidays, as long as I was working on my business, one thing every day is what I told myself, then I feel like I did my job. But as I've stepped into a team owner and in this role, I have to sit down with my agents now and say, okay, here's what your morning looks like. Yes, you are a 1099 contractor. Yes, I can't tell you what to do. You have your own schedule. But if you want to succeed, you need to block your mornings out. You need to time block and work. And if you don't have appointments in the afternoon, then you need to come back and set more appointments, because that's how you make money. That's how we put food on the table.
Yeah, you nailed it. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So no, that's so good. I mean, that analogy, sorry, it just, you buy your land. I'm going to probably use that forever now, because that's really good. That's a good analogy. Yeah. Hey, you got your acre. How are you going to, turn it into an oasis now? So no, that's so good.
In all due respect to all these people out there, this isn't a knock on anybody, but we've all met the guy that bought his acre and he wants to tell everybody about it. I got my license. It's like, great, let's go farm it now. That's cool. We can come look at the field. We can talk about the field, but unless you start weeding it and prepping it and sowing it and planting it and watering it, it's not going to do any good for you.
That's so good. So I guess let's jump right into the next one. Another question I have for you right now is, what are your thoughts on interest rates? That's the number one question we get on client facing. Interest rates are too high. Interest rates are going crazy. And a follow-up with that would be your predictions for the rest of the year.
Yeah. I think it's really important to understand why rates are where they are. So I'll just talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Because to understand why rates are at where they're at, it's easier to make an educated guess as to where they'll go. Making a prediction on interest rates is like trying to make a prediction on the stock market. It will never be better than an educated guess. But just real quick, JD, you go apply for a mortgage loan, you get a mortgage loan. The lender, whether it be a mortgage bank, a credit union, Zions Bank, whoever it is, they will sell your loan. Eventually, it will get sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac.
Right.
That's how it's always been. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will then sell your loan again, even though you'll never make the payment to the eventual owner of the loan. It will be sold again on the bond market. It's called a mortgage-backed security. And so just remember the high school economics, a mortgage or a bond, you have stocks and bonds. Stocks have a little more risk, greater rate of return. If you're willing to take the risk, bonds are less risky and more likely to give you the rate of return, but it's a lower rate of return. So when the pandemic started, the Federal Reserve was terrified of the housing market crashing. And so they went to Fannie Mae and they said, we know you're selling your mortgage bonds on the bond market, and we know your rate is dependent on what you need, what people will buy the bond at. But we want to set your rate. We want it to be 3% because we think that'll keep the housing market going through this pandemic. So we'll buy mortgage bonds and we will buy them from you at 3%. Whereas prior to that, it's like, let's say you, JD, you're a money manager at Merrill Lynch, and you're like, we don't want to buy mortgage bonds today. The yield isn't high enough.
Right.
So Fannie Mae would have to raise it. If everyone was like that, well, we better raise the rate to get a buyer, right? That's what it was up to. So during the pandemic, that's why rates, a lot of people that watch this will probably remember like, oh yeah, it was about a couple of ago, rates hit 3% and they stayed real low for quite a while.
Right.
And that's why. It's because the Federal Reserve forced the hand of Fannie Mae and said, this is what you're selling to us at. And it worked out. January of this year, that stopped happening. Well, believe it or not, January this year, mortgage rates went up because Fannie Mae is now selling their bond in the open market again, right? And so that leads us to today. Rates are relatively crappy compared to the last 2 years, pretty decent compared to the last 50 years. And where will they go? A lot of people believe that we will see a recession coming in the future. And to be really clear, I'm not talking about a housing recession. A recession by definition is 2 quarters of a negative GDP reading, 2 quarters of a negative gross domestic product reading. And so we just had 1 negative quarter. A lot of articles I'm reading believe that the second quarter will also be negative. Well, historically speaking, when you have a recession, the stock market corrects, goes back down. I'm not saying the stock market's going to crash, but it usually corrects during a recession. And then back to our original thing, if the stock market is not worth investing in, then people short term will invest in bonds, right?
Right.
Notes, mortgage-backed securities, whatever.
They got to put their money somewhere.
Yep. Fannie Mae, we only care about selling. We don't give a hoot what the rate is. We only care about selling the bonds. So if we all of a sudden have more buyers, we're like, we have to have more stuff to sell.
Right.
But likes our rates, so we don't have any to sell. So we better lower the rate to the consumer so that we have more bonds to sell on the bond market. So I believe that sometime in the next, this is a huge question to me, is when will this happen? I don't know, but I do pretty firmly believe that in the next 4 to 18 months, that will have a trickle down effect and you'll actually see mortgage rates drop.
Wow. That'd be awesome.
And I know that's, that was a lot of information there.
I think it was great information. Obviously, neither of us have a crystal ball. It's like things could go either way, but to have a speculation of maybe they'll come down is it's good news for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think you can look at past data. Historically, like 90% of the time, the stock market crashes or corrects, mortgage rates drop. It could be summed up by that. I wanted to open up the hood and explain why, but it can be summed up by that. So if you think the stock market's going to correct, which it already is correcting, there's a decent chance mortgage rates will get better.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely seeing that correction. I think I think we're finally moving out of unrealistic seller expectations. Um,
Yeah.
Between May 24th and May 31st, I just pulled these stats yesterday. There was another 138 unique price reductions, meaning
Wow.
different homes and had recently price reduced. The week before that, there was 149 unique price reductions on our market right now.
So I have a question. That's incredible. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there some point in the last 4 or 5 months that we had like 200 homes on the market total?
Yeah. So in February, the end of February, we had just over 300 homes, 332 homes, 322, I think. No, 322 homes on the market. It was a stat. And as of right now, I mean, I can pull it up while we're on here. We have, this is a good stat to know. I think there was close to, even from last month, like a 20% more increase in active listings in Greater St. George. So let's see, actually on our MLS. So on our MLS, yeah, we have 604 active listings right now that are active or contingent on our MLS in the St. George area.
Yeah, I love that.
So we're up, like I think it's like 14% more listings than last month, and that is a upward trend right now. This is one of the busier times for St. George too, just because, summer break, people are visiting, family that had waited to move, to finish out their school year, moving, a lot of upsizing, a lot of downsizings happening. And this time last year, I think we only had like 300 homes on the market that were for sale, and everything was going over asking. And I just put a house under contract, 23,000 under asking. So we're finally getting back to a little bit of normalcy. So I personally would like to see these trends continue and halt. And I'd actually like to see inventory in like the 1,200 range. Personally, I think that would be a very stable, normal real estate market where people aren't having to go crazy to try to get their offers accepted. So at least, so that's my predictions. I'm thinking that we're going to probably head into a little bit more slower season. And if any sellers are watching, if we were on the peak here, like this is the peak of the selling market, I think we're like starting to come down, where you can maximize the value in your house that you've actually, the equity that you have in there that you can walk away with. You're starting to lose a little bit of that value. Not much yet, though. Definitely not that much.
Right. There's still, yeah.
So a good follow-up question, and we get a lot of people asking us about this, is what are some clever ways to invest in real estate right now or finance real estate right now? Any like cool loan programs or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a unique product, which is actually a really unique product for a seller. It's called I don't know if you've heard of this. It's called a 3-2-1 buy down, or it could be called a 2-1 buy down or a 1-1 buy down. Basically what that means, and it's something that kind of pops into the market whenever rates are high. And what that means is you pay a fee at closing of your mortgage loan, and the fee does the following to your loan. In the first year of having the mortgage, your rate is 3 points lower than the current rate.
Wow.
In the second year, your rate's 2 points lower than that original rate. And in the third year, it's 1 point lower. And then in the fourth year, it goes. So an example would be, let's say your rate's 5% today, and someone were to pay for a 3-2-1 buy down. That means in year one, their rate would be 2%. Year two, it would be 3%. Year three, it would be 4%. And year four, it's to what today's rate is, 5%. But it's expensive. It is expensive. It's like, you've heard of the terminology of buying down the rate. You want to pay to get lower. It's similar in that sense, but it doesn't stay lower forever, but you can buy it down a lot more than you can buy down a normal rate. And so, but when you're in a market that you do believe rates will drop in the future, that on top of the 50-year-old data that each mortgage lasts for only 3 years, statistically speaking, people will pay off their home in a refinance or in a sell in 3 years. Then it's like, well, shoot, statistically speaking, you'll never get back to the normal rate, because you won't have the home long enough.
Right.
So what I'm getting at is, I think it's actually a benefit to sellers. And the reason why is, you're a seller and your realtor's giving you great advice of, hey, you need to do a $20,000 or a $50,000 price reduction on your, $800,000 house. Great option. You probably need to do it. However, what if you were to advertise some way that any buyer of this home can start out at a 2% rate?
Wow.
And the seller pays for it. Because honestly, It is expensive. It could be $5 to $10 grand, right? But that's a lot less than 20 to 50 grand that the realtor's asking you to do. And could that
they just use it as a credit?
Yeah. So you get a seller credit on your addendum. So that's, your question did use the word unique. I understand that's very unique.
I think it's great. I think so let me clarify a question. 3-2-1, it goes back to the original rate at the time of the loan, or does it adjust to the current rate of the year?
Back to the original rate, and then stays at that rate for the remaining, 27 years, 26 years left of the loan.
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a 3-2-1, 2-2-1, or 1-1, which is self-explanatory. If you do the 2-1 option, then you buy it down 2 points, and
then
in only 2 years.
Now, are people having to they have to qualify for the current rate before they can do that buy down, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. I haven't heard anything like that before, so that's actually pretty cool. You're gonna have to make sure you email me all that. No, that's actually, that gets my brain moving on my own stuff.
Yeah, it's a unique product, but that's kind of the fun thing that you've seen yourself. Whenever a market goes through a change, for better or for worse, you just learn new things. And a year ago, we were both seeing private money deals happen, right?
Yeah.
Or it's like, the only way we'll get this house is if we make a cash offer, but we need a loan. So let's go get private money to get under contract.
Hard money.
It's like, now there's always something out there.
And our team has partnered with hard money people for smaller houses like that, under 400,000. And that's a 10 to 12% interest and 2 to 3 points, is what they pay on that. And then those hard money people will usually have to go in first place on the title, and you have to refi to pay them off. It's kind of a mess, but it works. It's just, this seems like a much better route, in my opinion. I like this. And honestly, I think we are definitely moving back into a market where, cash will always be king, but we're going to see buyers starting to be able to come back and afford payments on the zero down or low down payments. I think those loans are going to start coming back. So that makes me happy.
Well, and you're right. And both these things are indicative of a buyer's market or a seller's market. In a seller's market, the buyers need to do the hard money stuff if they really, really want the house, and that's the only house, right? In a market, maybe the seller needs to offer the big concession or seller credit for the buyer to get the 3-2-1 buy down. It's just,
well, and I think that provides value on both cases, because one, you can make sure that the buyers that have submitted an offer work with a lender that you trust. And two, it's a really creative way to go to your sellers and say, I'm an expert, check this out,
Right.
and pitch it to them that way. And it's outside the box. And I think people really love outside the box solutions that are creative and fix their issue. You know what I mean?
Right.
So no, I that's awesome. I'm all for that loan program. That's really cool. Um, a good leeway question to this would be, what's your number one tip right now, that lenders and agents can do to provide value for their clients in this changing market? Like what's something that you're doing, or what's something that real estate agents should be doing right now?
Yeah, I think it's all about education. And I think it's that way in any market, though. I think it's going back to being an expert. And you don't want to talk your client's ear off. There's a fine line there. But I personally believe that in the most confident the more confident you can make your client, the better. And education creates confidence. Um, I've never seen anything work quite like just understanding. I'll have people come in, and perfect example is, we want to buy a rental property. We've saved up enough money to buy our first rental, but I don't know if we're going to qualify. And I have all these worries and blah, blah, blah. Well, one really critical piece of information is, did you know that the projected rental income of your new unbought rental can be used to help you qualify? Oh, wow. That just demolished a huge roadblock in that person's head and makes them more confident, right? And so I think just understanding what they need to know to help them feel confident is probably the number one thing. But I've felt strongly about that for years.
Yeah,
The best sell,
education is key.
yeah.
That's awesome.
But that's why I love what you're doing with these podcasts show things that you're doing is exactly what I'm talking about. It's educating.
Yeah, it's an easy way to do it because of our day and age, right? Social media is a good way to just blast these out, and people get an idea of what we talk about and understand. There's probably people out there that would have no idea about that loan program you just said, but now they're watching this and they're seeing it. So that, to me, you just dropped the mic on me right now. So I got a couple last little questions for you. What makes you tick, and what drives you in this day and age? What's your driving force?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's a question I love hearing the answer to from other people. There's two things, and it's such a cliche thing, but it really resonates deep in me. It's my family. Any career person, anybody in their career knows that there's just tough days and there's monotonous days. But I just have such a passion and a fire to create a culture of hard work, a culture of, ownership, and self-mastery. I want to create that culture for my children. And as I'm deeply invested in their future, and I feel like the best way to do that is to do it myself, So that really is a driving factor. Because JD, in this industry, you can make a lot of money, and it's really easy to make a lot of money if times are good, and then just to kind of chill for a while. But no matter how good the month is, I'm like, I'm going to go put in the time, because I want my kids to know that I'm putting in the time.
Right.
They'll someday need to do that. So yeah, that's big. And then back to my story with that loan officer that helped me. Another thing that makes me tick is I just have this desire to educate people. There are so many misperceptions and just myths about mortgage loans and real estate in general. And I'm just pretty passionate about, this is the truth, because the truth creates confidence, what we were saying a minute ago. So those two things, career, really motivate me a lot.
That's awesome. Family and education, man. I mean, that's really what life's about. Just
Yeah.
gaining knowledge and having a good life with your family. You can't ask for much more there. That's a simple breakdown, at least as simple as you can get it. Um, so right now, with how crazy and big St. George is planning on becoming, what are your thoughts on that? And what are you excited about St. George?
It's so interesting because I think about this all the time. I think a lot about, and I don't want to hijack your conversation here where you wanted it to go, but real quick, I wonder a lot about water. I know that St. George, with no roadblocks, is on like a Southern California trajectory,
Yeah.
like not that there will be 8 million people here, in the next 100 years, like what happened there, but it's just in such high demand. I talk to so many people, and you're the same way, probably. I have a list, 2 columns long, a full page long, of people that want to move here from out of state. And I think I did the math one day. I got the data. I think I did the math. I personally have like less than 1% of the market share of loan officers in St. George. And I'm like, wow, if that's my list, like the real list of people wanting to get here is probably huge.
It's wild.
And you mentioned 600 homes for sale, so
Yeah. Where are they going to live?
yeah. Well, I think long term it's just great. It's just a great future for Southern Utah. But that's why I love being here. I think great people are moving here. Everybody that I meet that moves here, I love them. I think really good quality people are moving here because they hear that it's a great place and they want to be with like-minded people.
I would agree. Seeing it grow is what it is, and the diversity that's coming here and the changes that are happening to our community and just all the positive stuff that's happening. It's been really inspiring to watch it happen. It really has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited about it. Um, I'm excited to see some new commercial and some bigger boxes coming here. Maybe another mall eventually.
Oh my God.
Maybe an IMAX theater, some of the cool stuff that we don't have that I would love to see coming here soon would be really great.
Yeah.
But what areas in St. George are you most fond of right now and seeing their growth?
I That's a great question. I have this that we're getting closer and closer on the east side of town. Long Valley, I think it's called Long Valley, is getting developed by D.R. Horton, and
Yeah.
Student Farms is inching out there, and that's cool because I've ridden dirt bikes my whole life in the neighboring valley right over Warner Valley. So part of me is like, well, don't touch Warner Valley, but the other part of me knows that it's inevitable someday, and it's just such a beautiful place. That's super neat. It just keeps going, and I think it's really fun to go out there and just literally see the edge of town grow month after month, further and further out.
Yeah, every time you drive out there, there's more dirt being pushed, more houses going up. It's been really exciting to see, and I'm along for the ride. I think we're really going to need to rely on new construction to absorb these lists, your 1% of your market share, your lists of people. We're going to need a lot of new construction here to support that. And supposedly the prediction is that we're going to see a ton of new construction available in the next 3 to 6 months. So that's going to be nice to see. Hopefully it helps alleviate that.
How do you feel like I think you've kind of insinuated this, but do you feel like we're, maybe 6 months away from being in a full-fledged buyer's market instead of a seller's market?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, I think I lost you there on your camera. But I actually do think that we're going to be heading into a buyer's market. I think with how much new construction is going to be on the market. I mean, I call builders around, and Ents Homes, I think, has like close to 30 or 40 specs hitting the market in the next 60 days. Salisbury Homes does, Carefree Homes, like all these builders have been really like finally starting to get their product in and get their homes into a spot that I think because of how much is going to hit the market with them, as well as how much we're currently on the market and people trying to sell to maximize their current amount of equity. I would say my prediction would be by October, November will be another 400 homes on market, maybe 500. And I think it's going to definitely push us into a more buyer's market, which is great for buyers because I know people want to come to St. George. They want to live in St. George. It's sad that there's times where these first time home buyers have to look in like Cedar City or even further north to be able to find a house when they want to be in, it's basically paradise here. So I'm hoping the chokehold of the pricing kind of alleviates a little bit and we can go back down to like an average price of anywhere between 4 to 475. That would be a great price point for St. George.
It's I think it's a realistic hope. So I agree with you.
That's awesome. Well, we're about out of time. Man, this has been super enlightening. You dropped so many little tidbits and bombs for me that are, I'm like, they're getting my hamster wheel turning. So I'm sure other people's hamster wheels are turning too. Again, Mr. Mike Bringhurst here, everybody. Thank you for taking some time out of your day and chatting with me. I'll put all your contact information in the YouTube link, and then as well as anybody watching this on like the email or Instagram, Facebook, contact information will be there for Mike. And dude, thank you so much. Thanks for jumping on, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, JD. Have a good one.
Okay, see you, man.